Remember when Superman had a weirdo mustache? Well, not really Superman, but Henry Cavill. And Warner Bros. Had to literally spend like tens and thousands of dollars trying to edit out that mustache from any live action movie where Henry Cavill was making an appearance. I actually do wonder what he would have looked like with that ridiculous mustache in a Superman outfit. And there are images out there. I'm just not 100% sure if they're 100% accurate, or if somebody edited a giant mustache on his upper lip. It's actually a really weird stance to take, because these giant studios are always asking actors to do certain things, like maybe gain a little bit of weight or lose weight, or even like shave your head. So it's just really weird that Henry Cavill drew the line at shaving his mustache. He was just not going to do it, okay? Anyways, all jokes aside, it was just something random that I thought about when I was researching this particular video. And that is because we are doing another one of these top DC Multiverse custom action figures video. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a third entry into this series. As I said, I wanted to start making like specific video series that kind of follow a trend. So we do have a DC Multiverse custom action figures playlist. So if you guys are interested in watching more custom DC action figures that the community has been working on, you can definitely check out that playlist. But we also have a Marvel Legends playlist as well, if you guys are interested in seeing either one of those. I know I usually name them like DC Multiverse or Marvel Legends playlist, but that's only for the sake of the title. I do include other stuff that isn't necessarily quote unquote Marvel Legends, but just things, or I should say collectibles, that are within that range of like the 1/12 scale. Same thing with the DC Multiverse. We don't stick to just the DC Multiverse from McFarlane. We also talk a little bit about Mezco, maybe even some Mattel sprinkled in there. Happens to have a DC collectible action figure out there. It just really depends on what I'm feeling, or which are the best custom DC action figures, period. As long as they're within that like 1/12 to 1/10 scale, they will definitely be featured. So as I said, if you guys are interested in watching any more of these top custom action figure videos, we do have 2 playlists, so you guys can definitely check that out. But anyways, enough saliva, enough breath. Let's get straight into the first action figure that I wanted to showcase to you guys, and that is this insane Azrael Batman action figure. And this one's really interesting. Now, I'm not going to really get into every single aspect of the figure, because honestly, I can't place everything. I think this particular customizer probably went in there, did a little bit of a wash, did a little bit of a repaint on the top portion to make it look more like, I'm assuming, the video game, which is what the description says. Also, that lower half, I'm pretty sure, is not the original body. If I'm not mistaken, he's reusing the top half from the Azrael from the White Knight universe, and then just porting a lower half that looks closer, or resembles closer, to what he would look like in the video game franchise. But honestly, he looks like he could be ripped out of a number of different comic book pages, just because the original one was from the White Knight Batman, so that lower half was like really thin and skinny. The legs for this particular Azrael are a little bit thicker. They almost have like a semi-cargo pants appearance. It's a really well done figure. There's a little bit of grittiness to it, and the price point really isn't that bad, especially considering how much effort appears to have gone into this figure. If you decide to pick it up, officially it's $85 plus 10 shipping, but obviously there are taxes attached to it, so you're paying a little bit over $100. Like I said, that's usually the price point you're looking at for most custom action figures, and it just seems like a really solid price point. Nothing too crazy, but it's pretty average for this type of collectible. The next figure in today's video might honestly be my favorite. I've said it before and I've gone on record. I think Shriek from the Batman Beyond might be clear-cut the most underrated McFarlane action figure of all time. I love the sculpt work on here. I love the source material as well, and the articulation on this figure was absolutely insane. I know McFarlane rarely gets any credit because a lot of his figures fall short in terms of articulation, but this is definitely not one of them. This is a figure that can even get into some like Spider-Man type poses. The design work and the engineering on this was top notch. Now, this particular version is the masked Shriek, so it was a part of that Build-A-Figure Joker bot, and the customizer even went as far as being able to re-engineer the arm piece so that could actually be ported onto the Shriek action figure, and then they went back back and actually did a really good, nice touch up all over the suit. Makes it look weathered, makes it look a little bit damaged. As big McFarlane collectors, we often complain that there just isn't enough paint, and with this particular custom, it really solves all of those issues. Now, the price point is a little bit high if it were just the paint, but because they were able to re-engineer the arm piece into the figure, I genuinely feel like it's worth the price tag. If you're doing math on it, it's probably around like 130 to 140 shipped to you. But what a beautiful looking figure, and the articulation is there. So it's not just about the paint applications, and it's not a boring body mold. This may be one of the best McFarlane action figures to date. Next up, I wanted to talk about this Doomsday Mega Fig from McFarlane. We know that this is not the version from the 2-pack, that Target exclusive with Superman. This is that solo release that's supposed to have like the kryptonite effects all over the body, and you can clearly see that this person has spent quite a bit of time and effort and a ton of paint, because obviously they painted over the kryptonite effect pieces, and then they did a phenomenal job of putting a really nice wash on this, something that we continue to beg from McFarlane. I don't know exactly why he chooses not to add that extra wash for some of these figures, but this is just a prime candidate. Now, the price point is a little bit high. You're looking at about $180 free shipping, but you will still be paying somewhere along the lines of like $200 once everything kicks in. It's kind of a hefty price point, especially considering the figure itself retails for about $40. So let's assume that this particular customizer went in with like a $50 figure, maybe spent another $5 on supplies. Seems a little bit high, but let's say another $5 in supplies. They are still looking to make somewhere along the lines of like 140, maybe closer to like 120 to 130 in profit. It's quite a hefty price point. I know that a lot of the time I talk about people's effort into these collectibles, but this one seems a little bit high, but it does look really well done. It looks phenomenal. I think this is one of those figures that will really stand out in your display. And unlike the previous custom, which actually had some engineer work, or at least some molding done to the arm so it could fit in there, this particular collectible doesn't really seem to have any new sculpt work. It's just paint. So you could easily do this yourself if you had even a semblance of experience customizing. But if you don't, this option is out there. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's a brilliant looking figure. As I mentioned, the only downside is that ridiculously high price point, but it's still a beautiful looking figure, and it deserves to be on today's video. Now, it's worth mentioning, and obviously right off the bat, it's the exact same seller as the previous listing, and I honestly did not even click on the profile for this particular seller. I was just going through the search, and I just happened to run into another one of the collectibles from this or another one of the custom collectibles from this particular seller, and it's essentially just a Batwing action figure with a wash, and I believe they painted the emblem on his chest piece as well. It looks beautiful. It looks to display incredibly well, especially if you have a flight stand for this particular figure. It will just look phenomenal. Sometimes that's all you need with these figures, just a light little wash, and it'll really bring out the detail. It'll really bring out the grittiness in a figure, and this is a perfect example. Same thing as with the previous entry, though the price point is a little bit high. If you're looking to pick this one up, you're looking at about like 140 to 150. It's kind of high, especially considering this particular figure, I remember, was on sale for like the longest stretch of time. I believe it was maybe like from like $10 to $15. If you picked it up at $10, let's assume, and then another maybe $5 in supplies, that's about $15, even with eBay fees and shipping and things of that nature. The profit margin is still incredibly high for this particular collectible. So like I said, as with the previous one, there's really no molding, there's no engineer work. It's pretty simple. It's just a wash. If you guys are interested in doing something like that, you guys can always do it. But if not, this figure looks phenomenal. I absolutely love the way that this photographs. It really brought this figure to life. Now, going from a couple of figures that essentially only had repaints done to, we are looking at a figure that looks to have a ton of new pieces. So we are looking at the Last Night on Earth Scarecrow, and if I'm not mistaken, this entire bottom portion of the body is brand new, because the original Last Night on Earth Scarecrow was essentially like half a figure. It literally had no legs. It had like the thinnest arms. It was essentially meant to be posed holding on to Bane's back, which is exactly how he was portrayed in the comic book series. Now, I'll be brutally honest, I'm very bad at placing different body molds or different limbs and accessories to their original figure, so I'm not going to try to do that here. All I can say, it's essentially a re-engineered Scarecrow. They added the legs, or they ported them on there. I believe they removed the hands and just ported new ones on there, and then they removed the helmet piece, and then they just exposed the head sculpt. Now, I honestly couldn't tell you where this particular customizer grabbed the legs and the hands from, but it probably wasn't a very expensive figure, because looking at the budget and how much this figure probably costs to put together, they're only charging about like $110 to $120. It seems like an extremely reasonable price point, especially for the amount of time and effort that it takes to put something like this together. I really like this figure, and what really makes it stand out is the fact that this is a completely unique version of Scarecrow. I know it kind of reminds me of like the animated series and then a few comic book series as well, but still it's definitely still one of the most unique versions of Scarecrow. Lastly, I wanted to showcase this Three Jokers Joker. I believe this is the clown from that particular comic book series, and it's the exact same body mold. I believe the only real upgrades were the head sculpt, and then there's a larger bow on this particular Joker. So there's nothing too crazy, nothing too insane, but that head sculpt looks absolutely phenomenal. Not to mention, I know I bring this up quite often, but just the amount of time and effort that it takes to actually paint a head sculpt. There's a lot of like intricate detail. The sculpt work obviously is probably done by somebody else. It's usually like a resin 3D printed head sculpt that gets sold online. Usually you can buy one from anywhere from like $15 to about $30 depending on the quality, but for the most part they're not painted. You actually have to like prime the entire head sculpt, put your paint applications, and then put another sealant on it. So it's definitely a lot of work. The seller is also throwing in a little cane that I believe was not with the original Joker. The original one had a crowbar, if I'm not mistaken. You will be looking to pay like low 100s for this figure, about like 110. You may be able to message the seller and get a better deal. Honestly, that would be the route that I would go, just because, as I said previously, it does seem to be like a little bit of a hefty price, but it is definitely an upgrade over the original Todd McFarlane version. So it is a matter of personal perspective when it comes down to this collectible. But as I always say, a lot of these custom action figures, depending on what's been done to them, they're usually going to range from like low 100s to about like 120s to 130s, depending on the figure, obviously. But there you guys have it, part 3 of our best custom DC action figures out in the market. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. These type of videos are always an absolute blast, so hopefully you guys continue to enjoy it. I already mentioned this, but if you guys want to check out more similar content, stay tuned and check out our top customs playlists on our YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there, enjoy the hobby, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.